Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. My name's Amanda Levido, and I'm from Southern Cross University, and I'm also an advisory member of the Australian Media Literacy Alliance, otherwise known as AMLA. Today, I would like to begin by acknowledging country. So I'm on the lands of the Turrbal and Yagara people, and I pay my respects to elders past and present of these lands and extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who may be with us today. I also want to acknowledge the long tradition of learning, teaching, research, and most importantly to this session today, storytelling of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, and also acknowledge that these lands have never been ceded. And I invite you to acknowledge country in whatever way works for you, wherever you are today. So thank you again. We're so excited to talk with you today. This session came about through Jane, Polley, and myself having a bit of a conversation and a bit of a chat, thinking about media literacy. And you'll hear from Jane really shortly. So the main point of our conversation from that day was really thinking about how we can support teachers to consider media literacy in classrooms in a more explicit way. So we know it's in the curriculum, but we were just thinking a little bit more about how teachers might be able to access materials, what kind of resources they might need, and also the fact that a great resource should be a great standalone resource, but how can it also act as a form of professional learning for teachers? So that's our aim for today. We're here to showcase, particularly towards primary school teachers, but of course all teachers and educators, some resources that they might start with or go to that are directly related to the curriculum. We thought that this being Media Literacy Week, it would be a really good time to have conversations about this and invite as many people as possible to watch now. And of course, share the recording afterwards. And hello, if you are watching this after the fact, we're glad that you could take the time to watch as well. We have several presentations today, but I do want to firstly draw your attention to the chat and Q&A function available. Please use this throughout. Feel free to ask a question or comment, and we will come back to these towards the end of the presentation. Before I introduce our first speaker, I also want to say that we're really mindful today that there are only a few voices in the room. So we know that there are programs and people and other resources who are really part of the broader media literacy landscape, and they're also doing a lot of heavy lifting in this space as well. So the presenters that we've invited today are part of AMLA in some way or have been working with us to promote media literacy education. So I guess I just wanted to say that as well. There might be some people who are really doing some fantastic work, and obviously we just don't have space for everybody for this particular session, but hopefully we'll have more opportunities in the future. So our first speaker today is Professor Michael Dezuanni, the chair of AMLA and a professor at QUT. So I'm just going to get Michael's slide ready.
Well, thanks so much, Amanda. So when we're talking about media literacy for the classroom, we are focused on how we can get students to reflect critically about their use of media, whether that's making media or responding to media, that is reading it critically. And so this is how media literacy is different to other approaches to the use of technology and media in the classroom. So it's different to, say, the digital technologies curriculum, where we're focused perhaps more on the skills of developing things with technology. So our framework for thinking critically about the media is this key concepts approach. So we have 6 key concepts, and these really underlie all of the things that we do in a subject like media arts in the curriculum, or if we're thinking about a media literacy approach to English as well. And I know that this approach is also kind of underpinning the new media makers and creators and consumers curriculum that ACARA has produced as well. So the 6 key concepts are technologies, representations, audiences, institutions, languages, and relationships. And I just wanted to talk about each of those just super briefly to give you that sense of how you can use this as a framework for critical thinking. So whenever we look at a piece of media or if a student is making media, we can be asking what technology was available to produce, access, and circulate this media. And we might also ask, does this technology gather personal data from users, for instance? Now, there are lots of other questions we could ask about technology, but they're some of the core ones. When we're focused on representations, we might ask, how are people, places, or ideas portrayed in this media? And what are the impacts of this? So we can think about bias and stereotyping, ways in which people are unfairly portrayed, whether or not the portrayal is accurate, for instance, or whether it's inaccurate and perhaps leads to a form of misinformation. We can focus on audiences. So who was this media made for, and how are they likely to respond to it? So who was the target audience that the media was created for? Or if you're making your own media, who is your target audience? Who are you trying to reach with your media? And we know that audiences sometimes don't respond to media in ways that are expected. So there's also a really terrific conversation to be had about that as well, about the role of audience. Institutions, who made this media and why did they make it? Did they make it for profit? Did they make it to inform people? Did they make it to try and persuade, for instance? Those are really crucial questions when thinking in critically reflective ways about media. The languages is down to the ways in which we communicate using media. So how we communicate using images, sound, and written text, or these days with generative AI, we might also talk about synthetic media and how that's created using a generative AI tool. But ultimately, it's about how can we look at the image? How is the image constructed and put together? How are sounds used to enhance the images or to tell a story in their own right? And how does written text complement images and sound to communicate? And then finally, with relationships, we're focused on the kinds of relationships that are being mediated through engagement with the media or technology. And those relationships happen on multiple levels. So it's about the individual's relationship to the media form. It's about how a relationship might be mediated between two people through the sharing of media. It might be about how when you share media on a social media feed, for instance, what kind of relationship does that put you in with regard to other people in your community? But we also have relationships with the algorithm, for instance. So we have a relationship with technology in that way. So how does the algorithm get to know who you are and what you're expecting to see on your feed? And then finally, if we're talking about AI, then increasingly it is about your relationship with the AI and how the AI gets to know you and how the AI produces stuff in relationship with you. So these are all really critical questions that we can be asking that lead to deeper levels of media literacy. Thanks, Amanda.
Thanks, Michael. So next up, we have Jane Polley from ACARA. And so Jane is going to talk about the recent development of the Media Consumers and Creators Curriculum Connection. So I'll throw it to you, Jane, and then just let me, I'll go to the first slide and just let me know when you're ready to move.
Brilliant, Amanda. I shall indeed. So thank you so much for inviting me today. And it's such an exciting thing to be able to share this with teachers because it came about after a lot of work with the people in this call today and many others who are probably watching and other members of the media educational sector. But what it is on the website, on the Australian Curriculum website, under resources, and if you just click again, a little square should go around the resources. Yay! Is when you click on resources, you go onto a thing called Curriculum Connections. And it's not just for media. There are curriculum connections around AI, around consumer and financial literacy, for example, online safety. But this is the first curriculum connection that's been made with an art subject at the centre of it, where media arts is at the core of the connection. Next slide, please, Amanda. So what we do with these curriculum connections, we try to surface for teachers where media literacy is in the curriculum, and we curate as much as possible of the curriculum, put it together into that resource. So we look at the 3 dimensions of the Australian curriculum, which are the learning areas, the general capabilities, and the cross-curriculum priorities, where they are related to media literacy. We look at the fact that media literacy is such an important concept. We can see that the OECD are going to be measuring it in 2029 as their innovative domain. We can see in our changing world, in this digitally connected world, how important it is. So we're connecting teachers to this important concept, but we also are connecting teachers to resources like the Media Literacy Framework for Australia that AMLA have very generously let us reproduce within the resource. So we make it a bit of a one-stop shop for teachers to come to, where they can find these different resources that the media education sector have created and made, and the work that Steph and Annabel have done, which they're going to share later, are some of those resources within our resource. Next one, please. So the way it came about was through lots of consultation and collaboration and conversation. So curriculum really is a conversation. I work at ACARA, the curriculum body for the national curriculum, and I'm the curriculum specialist for the arts. And what we often think about when we think about curriculum is that it is what we value for our students to learn, but it comes through dialogue between people who educate, and it's about putting them together in an architecture for teachers to be able to access, because teachers are the enactors of the curriculum. They're the most important element of a curriculum landscape. So we worked with AMLA and yourselves. We worked with ACME, the Australian Centre for the Moving Image. We worked with media arts teachers, especially from Adam, Victoria. And we also worked with some specialist critical friends, creativity scholars, digital innovators, First Nations scholars, to make sure that we were really looking at the whole spectrum of things that we needed to look at. The way that a curriculum connection works is that there are 4 aspects that it sort of works around, that it maps the curriculum to. And in the next slide, I'll go into that a bit further. And within that then are downloadable documents that teachers can actually click on and download for themselves. Next one, please. So those 4 key aspects are, as you can see, they're really important. It goes to what Michael was saying about, we really want students to be both critical and creative within a media literacy kind of understanding. So they need to have, and with their teachers, need to understand and analyse the contemporary media landscape. It's important that we put contemporary there, because as Michael explained, media arts, the art form, also looks at the history and the artistry of media arts, whereas media literacy is about what is happening now, how are people actually engaging with media. So that's that first one. The next one is that agency for students to create, to imagine and play and experiment, to communicate, think about how to share and communicate messages. What does that mean? The audiences, the platforms, how are they going to do it? And underpinning all of that is being critical and ethical. It's so important for them to be critical and ethical, and also to look at what is being done in the media space that is also critical and ethical. As you can see up the top, it's got media arts, English and digital technologies are mapped from foundation or prep, depending where you are, to year 10. So those 3. If you click again for me, Amanda, there's also little bits of mathematics and HPE and HASS, where content descriptions actually highlight media. So we know that teachers are having to teach content around media in those subjects, And so we've mapped to those content descriptions as well. And underneath that arrow at the bottom, you can also see the general capabilities. So we've kind of moved them around, showing that critical and creative thinking is so important. That's highlighted there as the priority. Digital literacy, literacy itself, ethical and intercultural understanding, personal and social capability. And we also link to the cross-curriculum priorities of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories and cultures, sustainability, and Asia and Australia's engagement with Asia. Because, of course, all these things happen in our media landscape and are so important. Next one, please, Amanda. So within the, and if you could click again for me, fantastic. As I said, we actually relate importantly within the resource to resources that AMLA have made, and it helps teachers to see the important complementary worlds of digital literacy and e-safety, otherwise known as online safety, and how they are complementary to, but they're also slightly different from media literacy. And so again, for teachers, it's giving them understandings of when they see these concepts, they can go to the resource and find these. Next one, please. And this one actually is like an explication of Michael's one about the concepts, because the same 6 media arts concepts that underpin the framework underpin the media arts curriculum. So for teachers, if I'm an English teacher and I'm trying to get a bit of an understanding of media arts concepts, they're already there within the curriculum for me to find. So for example, you can see there with the media technologies, they're used to access, create and circulate media. And then you can see that students use a range of tools and technologies, both digital and non-digital. And so we're just sort of showing a little bit what that might look like for students, what they're doing. But again, we're trying to show the cross connections between the various resources that teachers might use. Next one, my dear. So lastly, when teachers go on to the curriculum connection, and for example, I've got here, I'm just going to hold it up because I can't give it to you through the screen, unfortunately, but this is a year 9-10 resource, right? So if I'm a year 9 teacher and I want to actually see what it maps to, I actually can download it like this. I can download the Understand the Curriculum Connection as a downloadable document as well. But at the end of the actual resource, when you scroll down on the website, you'll see a thing called resources and downloads. And I've just opened the accordion there for student activities, lessons and examples. And you can see already that we've curated for teachers media and news literacy resources. So the first one's the MoAD. We've got the Cowdell Centre at the University of Sydney doing ones around misinformation, News Hounds with Squiz Kids, media representations by the Australian Children Television Foundation and ABC. And so, and then there's more around for First Nations, there's around digital storytelling, there's around screen culture, and we say where we think what year level they might be for, but do realise there might be a little bit of flexibility with that. So again, for teachers, for them to go to, it's a bit of a one-stop shop, hopefully. And if people have other resources, they can write to me, and I, if possible, I will add them. So that's the resource available for teachers, and I'd be really happy to take any questions later, Amanda.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jane. Thanks for taking us through, I guess, the way that was created in the first place, and the really fantastic way that you consulted and worked collaboratively with not only researchers and people who work in the field, but teachers who are on the ground actually going to be the ones using this resource. So thank you so much for that. The next person we are going to hear from is Annabel Astbury, the head of ABC Education, and also a founding member of AMLA. So Annabel, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and leave it to you there.
Great, thank you, Amanda. And thanks so much for organising this, and thank you, Jane, for that overview, and Michael for your overview of the capabilities. I think this is it's a really important time, especially during Media Literacy Week. So I'm just going to take you through the resources that we've got available on ABC Education. We've been involved with Media Literacy Week since about 2017, and that came about after I had a holiday in the United States during US Media Literacy Week, and I came back to Australia and said, why aren't we doing anything like this to celebrate? So we were able to begin to create the suite of resources that I'm going to show you today. Now, the ones that I've selected do focus on primary school. This is a primary school audience, but I might touch on at the end just the breadth of resources that we've got on the site. So if you don't know ABC Education is a portal that maps over 3,000 video and text resources mapped to the Australian curriculum across a range of subject areas. But if you're looking for media literacy resources on the ABC Education site, you can just go to this ABC Education, and this tab, Media Literacy, will take you to all of our media literacy resources. One of the resources that we have for very young children, so this is really suitable for foundation or prep up to about year 3, is a podcast called News Time, which is available on ABC Listen. It's a 12-minute podcast that comes out every Friday. It's hosted by Ruby Cornish, and it has a range of child-friendly news articles and a news podcast and news stories that involve children as well. So it has children's voices in it as well. Each podcast has a little quiz with it, but it's a really neat way to get some bite-sized news, or to talk about the concepts of news and what's happening in the world. And it usually, because it's for that younger audience, it's usually based at a local level that's very relatable for young students. But I think the real highlight of this, as I was saying before, is that it's got children's voices in it as well, and their experiences being shared. So that's available on the ABC Listen app. Of course, everybody's very familiar with Australia's most beloved children's news program, Behind the News, and you can find all of the resources for Behind the News on the Behind the News website. We have all the episodes on Behind the News that are there. And this week last week we did have a media literacy special, which focused on issues like online research, algorithms explained, slopganda, independent media, and also includes an interview with an aspiring journalist who's working in the field. So, but just a reminder with all of the BTN resources, so there's a weekly episode. There are also shorter versions that are broadcast each night on ABC TV. But just a reminder that with all of the BTN episodes, they do have the segments that you can go just straight to the segments, or you can. What we know is that that schools really like to watch the whole episode. But each episode has a set of resources that are mapped to the curriculum. So there's a quiz with each episode, but there's also a teaching resource that is quite extensive and has a range of activities that as they relate to the episode. So don't forget, like, you've got the episode, but you've also got this great depth of resources in the teaching resources and the quizzes. This year we launched a competition for students called News in My Neighbourhood, which gives students in primary and secondary school to contribute news stories that are appropriate. And we have a set of challenges that are set each term that are open to all Australian students. And we've been really delighted with the response that we've had to this program. On the site, we publish the winners. That's part of the prize of the News in My Neighbourhood competition. But just to give you an idea, if you go to the News in My Neighbourhood section from the Media Literacy tab on the ABC Education website. We have the winners, but we also have the rules for the competition, what the topics are going to be for each term. There's a competition calendar, so you can plan ahead in time. So if you don't want to have your class enter in one term, you can sort of look ahead to see what topics are available. The good thing about this particular media making competition is that, especially for primary school students, is that we open it up to a variety of modes of media to be submitted. So it might be a drawing, it might be a photograph, it might be a short account of a news story that's happening, within their local community or even within their classroom. So they're very accessible ways for students to start writing and start creating media. Next year, we're inviting students to create small recordings or small podcasts, perhaps as one of the entries that they've got. So I encourage you to have a look at the term 4 entries are open now, but we'll soon be publishing the News in My Neighbourhood challenges for 2026 at the end of this year. We also have a range of news literacy explainers that are designed to be news literacy basics that are designed for students with the student audience in mind. So these were made in conjunction with the Behind the News team, and they cover a range of resources of topics, including bias. What is bias? What news values are, like how the news comes to you, what makes a good news story, sources. And you can find these all on the ABC Education site under the Media Literacy tab. Just to give you an idea, we've got media ethics, sources, talking about sources, and you can see they're about 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes in length, but they're done in a style with humour that makes it very accessible for primary school students. So very suitable for talking about news literacy terms for years 5s and year 6 that I would recommend there. So sources, news values, bias, to conclude there. We also have a range of interactives, and we have this one called Source Checker. Again, I would say this is suitable for years 5 to year 6. And this is an interactive to teach students about the kind of sources that journalists use in creating their content. And just to give you an idea, the way that it's set up as a little quiz game. So when you open it up, you're required to select an avatar. You can choose a level, easy, intermediate, or difficult, challenging. And there's a set of steps that take you through that explain what the types of sources that journalists use. And we have a range of fictional stories that we've created. So these are not real stories. We make it clear that it's not a real news story. But at the end of each story, you're required to select the source types that are used in each news story. So it's a really good way to talk about the different sources that journalists use, whether that's report, opinion, eyewitness accounts, primary sources, social media, official statements, and those sorts of things. So that's available on the Media Literacy tab. One of our most popular interactives is this one called Real, Lols, Oops or Fake, and it's a interactive that teaches students good media literacy habits in sort of analysing news stories that are put before them. So as I just saying here on the screen, it's great for teaching about sort of care before you share a story. Now, the stories in this are real stories that link out to real stories or fictional stories or satirical stories. And it does work well. It was originally designed for a years 7 to 10 audience, but I have actually used this in years 5 and 6 classrooms as a group activity. So as a group activity, it wasn't too challenging. And what was great about it is that it could be teacher-led and stepped through. So I'll just take you through some of the steps there. So the idea of this interactive is that you're presented with a news item, and you have to detect whether you think it's real, whether it's it's for humor, whether it's an actual mistake where it is misinformation, or whether it's actually completely fake news or disinformation. And so you're presented with a news story, and then at each step, there's steps along the way before you make your final decision. So these are very much based upon the media literacy skills that are outlined by Stanford University, and looking at the Stanford History Education Group resources. So first, look at the headline, considering these things, are there typos, these things that you can see on the stage, on the page here. Next hint, look at the image. Does it look believable? Has someone messed with it? This is all very topical at the moment, especially with the advent with so much AI images in the news stream. Then carefully look at the copy of the news article. Look at the source of the article, and then you make your final decision and you submit your decision, and it tells you whether it is real, whether it's satirical. This is, I think, stepping through this as a group is a really good way to develop habits of analysing news stories. So we've got 2 versions of this game. And there's this one, and there's another one like version 2, which there are about 8 stories in each example. And just for those of you, just while you're sort of keeping abreast of all of the content that I'm covering tonight, I'll put a link to all of the content that we've got. I've got a document with all of the links to the material that I'm talking about. Finally, we have a series of explainers that are led by one of our beloved newsreaders at the ABC, Jeremy Fernandez, which explains some of the basics of news reporting. Now, I think these are very suitable for years 5 and 6. They're very palatable and accessible. Jeremy's presenting style is very palatable and presentable for years 5 and 6 students. But I think these are also really great from a professional learning point of view, because I don't expect all teachers to know the ins and outs of news literacy, or even the ins and outs of public service broadcasting, or what journalism is. So these are really great refreshers, especially we've found this one, Fact, Opinion and Analysis, is one of our very popular resources. And our anecdotal feedback we've found is that teachers are finding this actually very helpful for them to understand the difference between fact, opinion, and analysis. And just before I finish, just to give you an idea of the breadth of some of the other resources that we have on our media literacy tab there. We've got it divided into news basics. So these are the basics of understanding news. We've got a whole theme of content that discusses misinformation and disinformation, as well as explaining the terms, but includes all the interactives that are associated with that. And then we have a For Teachers section, and a lot of these activities here and these interactives, talking about bias and bias illustrated, are more suited for a secondary audience, but I invite you to consider them, because especially the bias illustrated might be able to be adapted for a primary school audience. And then finally, we do have a section that is Learn from Experts, where we've got journalists from inside the ABC and outside of the ABC, and academics, including, you can see Michael here, talking about different aspects of media literacy that really, again, is a professional learning opportunity for teachers to learn more about media literacy. So we've got lots of background about the way the news is presented and how it comes to you on your screens. each evening. And that's the little wrap up of the resources that we've got. I will, as I said, I'll just share the link to the document that I've been referring to, all the links that I've been referring to, but thank you.
Thanks so much, Annabel. Really appreciate that, and some fabulous links there for teachers to have a bit of a play around with. So that's fantastic. Thank you. So I'm just really going to briefly go back to my screen to introduce Dr. Stephanie Smith from the Museum of Australian Democracy. So I'll throw it over to you, Steph.
Hello, everyone. It's so lovely to see you today. Thank you, Annabel. That was such a great overview. I liked seeing Michael's face in there in the resources, and Barry, who is the chair of our board, feature as well. Thank you. So what I've chosen to do today is we have a large number of resources on our website, not quite as many as ABC Education, but you've given me goals, Annabel, to work towards. But I've chosen to just pick one topic that is a passion of mine, and it's picture books that I've chosen to connect some resources with that we have available on our website for you. So we have been really fortunate to have some great partnerships with some wonderful authors, and one of those is Kate and Joel Temple, who have a number of books. You may be familiar with their Bin Chicken series is one of my favorites, but we've co-created some resources together that link to a few of their, I'd say, middle fiction books is what I've more picked for you today. So they have a series you can see here on the screen called The Underdogs, which has also been turned into a podcast as well for students. But I really liked that this series was essentially it's a detective agency. They're solving crimes. But for me, it gave great links for students into news literacy and the opportunity to look at being able to create their own podcast, to being able to create news stories, social media posts, and really digging into how stories are told based on the facts and information that are given through the books. So we created some resources to go with it. So we have some ready to go templates that once students have listened to a podcast episode or you've read the book through with them, that you're able to complete a whole range of different tasks that align with those. We also really liked their series, and I'm away from home at the moment, but I did bring some books in my suitcase for you. I bought, you're lucky I couldn't find the rest of the collection before I left yesterday. But Frog Squad is a fantastic series, probably pitched for 7, 8-year-olds, maybe 9-year-olds, but these are live action. So they're created, there's 3 in the set, but they're created as a reality television show, which means they include commercial breaks, one of which you can see on the screen at the moment. And Kate and Joel are both hilariously funny in the way that they write, and I think it's a lovely step into the world of advertising and how you create commercial breaks in their stories, and same vibe of being able to create news articles and look at how a reality show works, and the elements of drama and entertainment, and ask those critical thinking skills in there, which feeds back to what Michael was mentioning earlier about those critical questions he had. So out of these, we created a host of resources. Kate and Joel were actually our media literacy ambassadors last year, and apologies, that image is a little bit blurry for you. But we have a whole host of, I love a good matrix. It's one of my other problems to go with picture books, glitter, and Lego, if you would like to know a little bit more about me. But we created a series of these one-pagers that are done in a cartoon style with the wonderful David Conley, who is a local artist, author, but also a teacher in the ACT. And they're a really good into starting those conversations with students, and they're beautifully illustrated, and you can download those from the website, and I'll find you some links. But I love a good matrix where we give you lots of little ideas, and this one in particular was linked to a whole range of books and ideas that go with Kate and Joel's texts. One of such books, a picture book that you may know because it won a CBCA award last year, was That Bird Has Arms, which feeds more into e-safety, but this idea of looking at social media, looking at posts, but also being a little bit different and unique. And I've heard wonderful stories from Kate when they go to visit schools, and students have written beautiful letters to the bird who has arms, and that sense of empathy. And, you know, so it's a lovely into how does it make us feel when we're viewing media, when we're seeing, you know, scrolling, how do you connect with the media, and is it evoking particular emotions that are unusual, connecting with you, or making you feel quite angry? And this is a beautiful book to explore those concepts with. And then this week, we've had a wonderful week in the studio. So we do lots of things with Kate and Joel, but two of our other favourite people to hang out with are Matt Cosgrove and Eva Amores. And this week, and I am going to drop in the chat for you the link to the recording for this one, but we hung out this week for Media Literacy Week to look at their Worst Week Ever series, which is full of different types of media. So poor Justin Chase is having a very rough week. He's got a new stepbrother that's creating a YouTube channel that features him with edited videos. He's on live morning breakfast shows. There are memes being created. So all advertising. He's got merch, which you can see me wearing some merch in the final scene there in our beautiful bookshop at MoAD. But lovely way to start those conversations with students by using books that will already draw them in, but have wonderful examples of media and open up those wonderings and curiosities about how are these experiences created, what happens when you edit a video for YouTube and post it about someone else, those consent considerations, ethics, that are wonderful examples that you can use from picking up these books in your local library, or, you know, at your favorite bookstore. So I felt that these were wonderful examples to share with you today because they are resources that you can access, and then we've just added a beautiful layer with the support of these fabulous authors and illustrators to help better connect them to the classroom. So I hope you enjoy reading those series as much as I do. That's what I like to spend my weekends doing, and then bothering them to ask them if they'll participate in my shenanigans of how I've connected their resources to media literacy or civics there. But thank you so much, and that's it from me for today.
Thank you so much, Steph. So I'm just going to go back to my screen shortly because firstly, I've fixed the media literacy key concept slide in the meantime. So if you were playing along and you were trying to match the definition with the key concept, you can now see if you're right. But I'll just leave it there for a moment and we'll fix up the recording so that the actual correct slide is there for everybody as well. So now it's over to the audience. So we've got some time now, about 10 or 15 minutes, to answer questions or have a discussion if there are any things that people want to bring up. So I'm just going to stop sharing the screen so that you can we can more easily talk. But if you've got a question in the chat, just make sure that when you type it, the little to button underneath, you should be able to click on that and just make sure that it goes to everybody. So everybody in the room can see your question, or feel free to use the Q&A. And we'll give you, I know I should have got the elevator music for some, you know, the 7 seconds or whatever it is that you're supposed to wait for people to have questions. But we'll just give it a minute to see if people have anything, or, you know, any other comments or things that you'd like to share as well.
I've just added in the chat, Amanda, there's of course, there's lots of media literacy and news literacy programs that are happening in Australia. And of course, it was Jane already talked about News Hounds, which is run by Squiz Kids, which is a super
I think Bryce is here even
Yeah.
at the moment. So hi, Bryce.
And also the schools newsproject.com, which is really trailblazing and encouraging students to create their own news publications in schools. And there was a Media Literacy Week event that was run today out of Western Sydney University, where they had a press gang day, and there was a group of 50 students who were able to interact with journalists and you know, put their tough questions to them.
That's fantastic. You know, I remember when I was a kid, even, you know, having a school newspaper, even if it was just a double-sided A4 sheet kind of thing, was a really popular thing to do as a classroom activity. And, you know, great to hear that that tradition is continuing in different kinds of ways, potentially. So thanks for sharing, Annabel. So I've just got some things in the chat. But Annabel, I wondered if maybe while we're just waiting to see if there are any more questions, I was really interested in the local stories competition. And I'm really keen to hear, I don't know if you've had a chance to watch many, what kinds of stories children and young people are interested in their local community.
Things that well, sometimes it's issues that are happening within their community, whether they're environmental issues or political issues that are happening. For the younger ones, it's just actually things that are happening in their immediate world. So it's news that's happening with their family or within their classroom. One of the more endearing ones was this student just talking about how much they love their teacher. But giving them the opportunity to share what's in their world. So it's not political news that you would normally think of, especially for the young ones. And there's different ways that they can express that. So we think it's really important from an accessibility point of view, if they're not able to write, they might be able to represent that in a drawing or in a photograph or as such.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks so much, Annabel. Now, we do have a question in the Q&A from Aaron. So Aaron is asking, are there any suggestions on discussing the upcoming social media ban with students interested from either BTN or news, or links to resources? Like the Bird Has Arms in our schools. So yeah, Annabel, have we had any of that on BTN yet?
Yeah, certainly. BTN have actually covered that, and they've covered it on a couple of different angles about the different media platforms. You know, whether they, you know, should, you know, there's a segment on, you know, should YouTube be included, you know, in this ban, and students' voices on that. We also did have a more global adult discussion from our ABC News team in the Your Say campaign, which was covered on national radio, and I'll find the links to those. But there's been very robust discussion, which has also included student voices in that and their opinions, but the opinions of parents, people within the community, politicians, etc. If you just give me a moment, I'll be able to find that. Oh, and thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. And we've also got the survey that we're asking students to participate in.
Fantastic. Michael, did you want to expand on your answer at all as well?
Yeah, sure. So we've been doing a bunch of work around the social media ban for younger teens, and so I've just posted a link to an explainer that we created at QUT, which is kind of focused on demystifying the social media ban and bringing out some of the key issues and some of the key debates that relate to the social media ban. And it's written at a level that's probably accessible, I guess, for lower secondary school students. maybe even upper primary school students, certainly teachers would be able to adapt that kind of resource for use in upper primary school as well. So I've just provided the link there in the Q&A.
Thanks so much for that answer, Michael, as well. So I'm just having a quick look in the chat. I can see Colin Stewart has asked a question. Hi, Colin. So he's asked, what potential is there for the use of AI in the classroom? And Colin's saying he's having a bit of trouble with sound. I'm not having that same trouble, Colin, but I mean, I hope it's not just you, but I also hope that it is just you. So, but I will throw the question open to the panelists about resources or potential for any ideas around the potential for AI in the classroom. Does anyone want to have a?
Well, I suppose the answer to that is that it is already part of, you know, generative AI and different forms of AI already kind of embedded into other digital technologies that are already being used. And then there's the potential to consciously use certain forms with students and do prompt engineering with them, for example, or work with them in a conscious way. But already generative AI and other forms of assistive technology are already underpinning many of the digital technologies and digital tools that are being used. So I think that AI literacy is part of media literacy, and that the frameworks, there is the generative AI framework that is kind of underpinning other frameworks that schools and jurisdictions are using. It's always so interesting though, because again, for teachers at the coalface, having to understand it all and do it. I think, you know, from someone, myself, who's not from a technological kind of background, is, you know, having the chance to maybe play with some of these things and explicitly sharing that with students around your own journey with it. So it's bringing them along with you, that this is sort of new things for all of us. And there's potential and there's also pitfalls we've got to be careful of as well. But it's a fascinating space, Colin. It's definitely the thing that I think is kind of the next big thing that we're all grappling with in this space. And, you know, media literacy is literally a multi-literacy. It's the AI literacy, digital literacy, just literacy, you know, it's all of the things. So great question. I don't know if there's someone else who'd like to.
Yeah, does anybody else have thoughts to add?
I mean, I think going back to the key concepts, you know, any kind of synthetic media that is AI generated media can just simply be analysed through that, through the key concepts framework. So we know that often AI generated media misrepresents groups, for instance, because it's drawing on data that is already inherently biased in some way. It is super interesting to prompt a Gen AI generator to construct an image of a typical Australian family, for instance, and then to reprompt to say, can you give me a more diverse Australian family? And to see the kinds of results that are produced. In fact, Amanda and I kind of did a bit of an experiment like that, and then talked about it for our ACME session that we did. So as part of that webinar series. So we talk a bit more about it there as well. Then for me, I think the other really super interesting thing to be thinking about is just how, for synthetic media at least, it changes the process of media production. So in quite profound ways, and changes how we think about maybe the production process and the steps in the production process. So obviously, if you're prompting and then reprompting and then taking that media and bringing it into some kind of image editing tool, and all of these steps are just changing the workflow for media production. And I think, yes, we need to get our heads around that, but I think it's also useful to help students to understand how those media production workflows change in an AI environment.
Fantastic. Thanks, Michael. We have a chat message from Sophia Hobson, who's asking, and this is a good one, what is your favourite media literacy resource to use with preps or foundation, depending on where you might be? Any thoughts on that one?
Well, I'm going to spruik your prompt cards, Amanda.
Thanks.
That was shared today on the ACARA Facebook post, if anyone saw that. But Amanda shared those, and I thought they were just really lovely, beautifully appropriate, age-appropriate cards. But I know that also Steph and Annabel have shared stuff today that they probably have there.
I think there's a real opportunity for a lot more media literacy resources to be developed, and that's certainly something that we're looking at and hoping for the future at ABC Education. I'm just trying to find the link to Amanda's resources there, but I think those sorts of things, conversation cards are always very helpful and very accessible for foundation students. Just pop it in.
And I'd probably add, highly recommend checking out, I think it is Laura and Philip Bunting, Lyrebird is a great one to start talking about the idea of fake news, and probably Drop Bear that was just released as well, in Hearing Stories and What You Believe is probably what I'd add to Sophia.
Fabulous. Michael?
I was just going to say, I think, well, you can't go past Bluey as an example of something to be kind of maybe talking about in the classroom. So just as an example of a text that you could use that kids probably love, and just talking about a concept like representation. So, how are the characters represented? What are their values, and how do they treat each other, and so on. But then also, how is the family represented? How do particular episodes maybe challenge how people can be portrayed or represented? I mean, Bluey is so clever with raising questions itself about all of those things that it's a pretty rich resource for the classroom, I'd say.
Can I add on to that, Little J and Big Cuz, as
Yeah.
it's actually made, the characters are transitioning from home into school. It's a First Nations creative team who created it. They used a particular palette that was based on Australian colours. They worked with elders. You've got Deborah Mailman and voicing characters, and Miranda Tapsell, etc. So that's a beautiful one, because in the the content descriptions in the curriculum that say, please look at First Nations works using media arts, you've got that there as a beautiful thing, but also across English as well. So
yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Jane. And we've got one final question, and probably just enough time to answer it, I think. So Aaron in the chat is asking, how can schools with limited access to paid digital or subscription resources effectively learn to produce simple media videos?
Oh, sorry. Let's have a look at the question. Sorry, can you just repeat the question?
Yeah, I can repeat the question. How can schools with limited access to paid digital subscription resources effectively learn to produce simple media videos?
I would jump in and say super quickly that I think, tablets like iPads can be a really terrific resource for producing videos. I know that tablets in and of themselves are expensive, but often schools do have, a set of iPads that get taken around to classrooms, for instance, and you can make really terrific videos using a number of apps that are available on iPads or other tablets.
Yeah. And I'm just popping in. We've got a couple of resources on just how to make video via Behind the News website, just for the Rookie Reporter program that we have. And there are a couple of resources in there about how to shoot a story, how to get great sound, and not necessarily having, proprietary sort of licensed content.
can I say that's a really interesting question when we think about the digital divide, and this is something that we're just, as educators, we need to kind of remind the people who resource these things that this is a really important part of it. If we're asking students to be media literate, they do need access to these things. So, you know, I think this is also, it's a great question. It's making me think about how do we systemize that to make sure that we don't leave anyone out of the conversation.
And I do, just to add as well, I guess I do think that access to technologies is a really important part of learning to be media literate, but there are things that you can do that are pen and paper type activities, reading, you know, more hands-on types of activities as well that can support students so that when that access comes along, whatever that might look like, if that's in, you know, a different type of environment, that students and children are ready to kind of move forward with some of those skills as well. I'm not saying anything replaces actually getting to play and experiment with technology, but there are other activities, I guess, to support that kind of media literacy development before that might, you know, happen in other instances as well. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I think that pretty much wraps us up for today. I'm just going to finish up by just sharing my email address. So if you do have any questions about the session, please feel free to send me an email, or I'm sure our presenters would also be happy to connect with you as well there. I will, once I've edited this video, I will endeavour to send it out to everybody who signed up to the session. So if you did sign up and you're here today, I will send it to you, and please feel free to share that on. And then, of course, if you've got colleagues who missed this session but did sign up, then I will send that out to everybody who was on the list as well. So thank you so much. I will stop sharing. And it was great to see some familiar names in the chat and in the participants there. And thank you everybody so much. And thanks for joining the session.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.